repeat the nonconformist oath. I promise to be different. I promise to be unique. I promise not to repeat things other people say.
Welcome back to Positive Blatherings, where we talk about positive things and blather, basically. That's the whole gist of this podcast. Yes. Kris Betts is joining me today, and you might recognize her from Channel 13's News in the Morning, the morning show. What do you guys call it? Good Day Rochester?
Good Day Rochester.
Good Day Rochester. And you were here in studio with the Curiously George podcast, which is on the Rockvox Podcast Network.
Yeah, good stuff.
And I was like, I want to have her on the Blathering. And that was like a year ago, it seems.
Yeah, no, that was almost a year ago, if not more, which is crazy. 'Cause it feels like time has passed not at all.
Really?
Literally.
No, I was joking, but you're right. It probably was.
Yeah, because it was cold outside. So I think it was about this time last year. I don't even know what's happened in the last year. What's new?
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm bringing
crazy.
positivity to this.
See, that's why you're here. It's perfect. You, when you were in, you really had this warmth about you, and you have that on TV as well. Okay. And, a lot of times, well, I have seen it in my experience that warmth stops when you leave the studio.
Sometimes I've seen that too.
Which is not the case with you. So I thought it was pretty cool. And now we're sort of neighbors.
Yeah.
You live in the same area as me now. So
yes.
Very cool.
Can I share where that is?
It's up to you.
Okay, I love it. I feel like I need to do marketing and PR for the Village of Fairport. Not that it needs it, but yeah. I have just fallen in love with it. So I want to share that. When you love something, like everybody needs to know about this thing that I love.
Yep.
And it's like, I just discovered the Village of Fairport and it didn't exist until I moved there. So let me tell you all about the Village of Fairport. But so many of my followers, because I came from Austin, had no idea. I mean, they hear New York City, right? Or New York, and they think of New York City.
Yeah.
So when I have been telling them about and showing them, where we live, especially like right on the canal. And my husband and I yesterday went for a walk along the canal. It was so nice. The weather wasn't great, but no, it was nice yesterday. This was Saturday. It started raining, but we didn't care. I mean, it's just like, we can't believe we live here because we don't have that much water in Texas, in the middle of the state, central Texas. And when we do, it's dried up half the time. And the leaves don't really change colors. They just go green and then they die. We get fall for about a week. So the leaves are changing here and it's so beautiful. And all these followers from Austin will be like, you're showing me a part of New York I never knew about, because they don't know. I mean, people in downstate, they know about the Finger Lakes, which is great. But it's fun getting to get other people to fall in love with this area with me. So yes, we're both Perrington people now.
Yes, and I come from South Florida, which is very similar in a lot of ways to Texas.
Yeah,
hot. In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, hot, and we used to joke around and say, winter fell on a Tuesday this year.
Yes.
And, there was no such thing as fall. I mean,
no.
There was, but I didn't, it's not like how everyone, sees it.
No, because I grew up watching, is it Casper? Yeah, it's Casper. And then what's the Halloween movie that everybody loves with Sarah Jessica Parker and the witches and...
Oh,
the Halloween
Hocus Pocus.
Hocus Pocus.
Yeah.
And those are set in the fall, and it's fall. And I remember growing up like, what is this?
What is this
thing?
fall?
There's like leaves blowing and the kids are wearing jackets, which they're definitely not doing now in Texas and Florida. You're wearing a tank top for your Halloween costume.
Right.
And I always wanted to experience what that kind of fall would be like. And it took me 32 years to experience a true fall, or one where I was cognizantly aware of it. And now I'm like, I cannot get enough falls. Now I'm counting, okay, if I live to 80, I get this many falls left. Like, I'm cherishing each and every one because it's not like that growing up. And you don't dread summer here like you do in Texas and Florida, right?
What's
where you
funny?
kind of
don't
know it's coming and it's going to be 110 degrees for 5 months straight. So you're like, brace yourself. Here it comes, where people here kind of brace for winter. We brace for summer.
Yeah.
Because we know it's going to be long and it's going to be hot and you're going to be stuck inside for most of the time. So you don't have a heat stroke. So now I'm like, summer's great. We get to go outside. It's beautiful.
I love
You're not
summer.
dying. Yeah, I love summer here.
Yeah.
So far, I love winter too, but people keep laughing at me about that.
So
wait.
I have the same thing. I absolutely love it here. I never thought I would love it here.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife is from Webster. I grew up in South Florida. I'm originally from Long Island, but moved down to Florida when I was 5. So I really
Florida.
am a Florida boy.
Right.
I'll never move back there.
I don't think I will either. And last year I was still having that feeling. I mean, Austin is home.
Yeah.
Well, it was. And it felt like home, and we still have a home there. And so it was always just like that security net of if this doesn't work out or we decide we don't, in fact, like winter, we can always go back. But every time I go back to visit, the traffic gets worse. And I've become like a one-man band about this traffic thing. I get it. But it's true. It's bad. And, the weather's fine, whatever. It was really hot this summer when we went back. And I thought, I don't miss this. And there's just more and more and more people.
Yeah.
And it's sprawling. It's big. I don't know where you grew up in Florida, but Austin's grown so much. Yeah. And so when I come back here, it just feels like I have everything I need. I mean, there's not really anything I don't have that's not here. And so it's like I get great restaurants, museums, stuff to do with family, indoors and outdoors, which is nice. It's not too hot to not be outside. And I just I don't know. I don't think I'll ever move back. Knock on wood. Who knows? But every time my husband used to ask me, do you want to go back? Because he doesn't want to go back at all. Every time he used to ask me, I'd be like, I don't know. Maybe we do. But now I just don't see our future back in Texas. I see my kids growing up here in Fairport. And that sounds, my husband and I moved around everywhere as kids and adults, obviously. He was born in Turkey. I was born in Baltimore. I think we counted how many times each of us have moved since now and up until now. And it was like 20 for him and even more for me. And
wow.
Yeah. And you never really get to
military
put down
families.
His is military. Mine's my dad's in sales, and just moved him all over the place. And now my parents are in Tokyo. So they're still moving all over the place. And then they moved from Houston to South Carolina when they're back in the States. So they're probably going to move 5 more times even while they're living in Tokyo in the United States, because they spend some time here still. So they love to migrate. And I like starting over too. But I'm also like, it's kind of cool to think about my kids having the same friends from kindergarten through high school, because I never got that experience.
Yeah.
I'm happy if I know somebody since like junior high. And even then I don't really, because we've moved so many times since then. So I kind of want to give my kids an experience different from what I had and see if it sticks. And we may move because we're both kind of nomads at heart. But I think we're just tired of moving, and we've found everything we're looking for here.
Yeah, when you get kids involved, that's when it starts to change a lot. And you're like,
yes,
because that's what brought me up here for sure. We were in Florida. We had moved back and forth from Rochester to Florida 3 or 4 times.
What made you keep going back that way?
For me, it was work.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't happy here. I didn't get the jobs that I wanted, and I worked for a cruise line, and they kept calling me back. They kept saying, "Come back."
Hard to work for a cruise line here in Rochester.
Yeah, it doesn't work too well.
To cruise along the Erie Canal, Lake Ontario, if you're feeling real wild. Yeah.
But so we moved back and forth, and then the last time we were living down there, I was like, just like you said, sprawling concrete jungle.
Right.
You go from one town to the next town to the next town, and it does no difference.
Yeah.
And my kids, my son was going into preschool, and I was like, do I want my kids to go to school here? We couldn't get a house that we wanted, like in a neighborhood we wanted to live in.
Right.
So the homes were way too. Now this was in 2005-06, so the bubble, that housing bubble was like,
right.
So it was like a terrible neighborhood. The houses were going for like $350,000, and we were like, just starting out.
Right.
Like we can't do this.
Yeah.
So we looked at Rochester and we're like, we ended up living right down the street from her parents.
Yeah, and probably a much nicer place than you could afford. I mean, taxes are tough, I will say, but once you get kind of used to it and you see what you're getting for the taxes, I mean, where we live in the village, I feel like village taxes pay for everything. It's great.
Yeah.
We throw so much trash out because the trash people will take all of it.
Wow.
Texas is like, if it's outside that one trash can, it's going to be there later when you get home. They ain't touching that. Here, I mean, I've watched them do. I'm like, wow, they took all that stuff. How much more stuff can we put out there for them? No, I'm just kidding. I hope the trash guys aren't listening to this. When we moved, we had so much stuff. They took it. They plow the roads here. They take care of the streets. I feel like we get great schools here for what you're paying. So the taxes are a little bit tougher, but you're also getting, I think, a lot more for your money.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Texas schools we looked at. I mean, our district we were in and our kids would be in is not bad by any means, but I don't know. There's just something about being up here I love. And so I feel like no matter what I end up doing, I want to stay in this area. It's kind of nice to finally feel like I know where things are. I still have to I mapped myself here today. I still have to map it, but I'm starting to recognize all the roads and I'm like, okay, I think I know where I am, you know?
Yeah, it's funny. I know my way around Rochester better than my wife does, and she's from here.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Do you map it still, or do you ever
sometimes,
have to map it? Okay.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
If my son wants me to drop him off at his friend's house and he lives, I don't know the address for sure.
Well, yeah, you have to.
But I still, once I look at it, I go, oh, I know where that is.
Right. My husband was a police officer in Austin for 23 years, and he grew up really once his dad retired. Mm-hmm. So like junior high on, he's been in Austin. So he moved a bajillion times up until then. And then once his dad retired, he was set there. So he knows that city like the back of his hand. Every road, probably all the houses. He's probably arrested somebody somewhere on some street, anywhere in the city.
Right.
And so and when we moved here, he's a stay-at-home dad now to our 2 young kids. So he's really just at the gym, grocery store, or the house, or now my daughter's preschool. That's it. He doesn't branch out.
I lived that life.
You know that stay-at-home dad
life?
life?
I know that exact life.
Yeah, it's pretty contained. You're not going out in the city driving around on like Culver. I wouldn't recommend it anyways, but in some of the areas. But it's weird. He even said the other day, he's like, it's so weird living in a city where I don't know all the streets.
Yeah.
Because he was like, oh, we were going to a wedding, and he was like, well, where is it? I said, I don't know, some place called the German House. I have no idea where this is. Neither of us do. And as we're driving there, he's like, I don't even know what part of the city this is, because he's never in the city.
Yeah.
So it's fun being new. Sometimes it's frustrating because you're so used to knowing all the streets. And I knew the same about Austin. I knew all of the areas. But here it's like getting to discover new things, but it's definitely starting to feel like home, which I love. And meeting people is the thing I think that makes it feel like home.
Sure.
And 2 years in, now that we can actually see other people in person,
right,
and go out to lunch or have dinner with other friends, and meeting people here are so nice. And I didn't expect that. And I think because a lot of people are from here, they're just, I don't know, it's like they're friendly because they're not, like in Texas, I feel like everyone's from California or angry at the traffic. And so, it's everyone's just kind of doing their own thing. And here I feel like everyone probably grew up with the same people they've seen. If they haven't left, they've come back, kind of like you and your wife.
Yep.
And so they're open to meeting new people because they're happy to have new people around. I don't know. Yeah. Everyone just is nice here, I think.
I know a bunch of people that lived in LA that moved to Austin. That's like the place that everyone's going from from LA.
We know. Yeah. And I'm not a born and raised Austinite, so there's a big difference. But I feel like if you've lived there longer than like 10 or 15 years, you're pretty much like, you're incorporated, because everyone is so new there. That
you're the old salt.
You're old. Whereas here in Rochester, it's like if your great grandparents didn't come from here, then you're pretty much new, because a lot of people are from here and never really left, or if they left, they came back. Mm-hmm. And it's funny to me because I'll ask somebody, at work in Henrietta, where the station is, are you from here? Just getting to know them. And they'd be like, oh, no, I'm not from here. And I'm like, oh, well, where'd you grow up? Thinking they're going to say like North Dakota.
Yeah, right.
Like, in Greece.
Brighton.
I'm like, really?
I thought you meant, am I from Henrietta?
No, I know. I was like, no, this is a upstate New York. It, to me, is one area. Like if you're anywhere in upstate New York, even Buffalo to me seems like it's all kind of clumped together, because in Texas, like if you're either in Central Texas, it's such a huge state. I mean, this is a big state too, that, if you're from within 2 hours of the main city, you're from there. So it's funny to me to hear people say that.
That's interesting.
They're very tribal here. You guys are very serious about your towns and your villages. Very distinct about which town or village you live in.
I know when I first met my wife and she said she was from Rochester, I was like, where the hell's Rochester?
Me too.
I thought her accent sounded like she was from Cleveland.
Oh, which is kind of,
it's
close enough.
Midwest-ish.
Yeah.
But I was like, because, most people from downstate, it's like Long Island, Westchester. That's it.
That's it.
Albany. That's all you know. Everything else is upstate.
Right.
And there's so much more
I know.
in New York now.
Well, and then now I tell people if they're from downstate, or I'm like, I live in the Finger Lakes region.
Yeah.
And for some reason, people seem to know that better. Yeah. They're like, oh, okay, the Finger Lakes region, because they'll vacation up here.
Yeah.
You know? But when I got the job offer from the news director, who's now not at 13 WHAM, but was there at the time, he found me on YouTube, and I was looking at like Boston, Chicago, Dallas, these jobs, and wasn't sure what I wanted to do. My husband really wanted to live somewhere with snow. So Dallas was the main front runner for work, but doesn't get a lot of snow. Yeah. So he was kind of just not excited about it. And honestly, I grew up in Dallas. I wasn't really excited about it either. There's not much there but concrete and money and shopping. And yeah, so sorry to anybody listening from Dallas, but I'm not a big fan. And I remember I got the email, and it was this news director, Matt, and he's like, hey, I know this seems like shot in the dark, but we're here in Rochester and we're at the station, and it's a legacy station. You know, when you Google it, you see Dawn and Doug and Ginny, and you're like, oh, wow, like this is a big deal. Like these people are big in the news industry. I mean, Don Alhart's like in the Wikipedia, you know. Right. And so once I learned what it was, obviously I learned the reputation of the station was big, but at the time I had never even heard of Rochester. So I screenshot that and sent it to my husband, and I was like, LOL, what is this? Like so random. And I hadn't even Googled it yet where it was. And he goes, oh, I watched a House Hunters in Rochester. Like it's pretty. And you can get a lot for your money there. Like the house prices are decent.
I know the guy that did the sound on those.
Did you? And I think, how many House Hunters were there up here?
It was quite a few. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was a couple.
He said he had watched it, and he loved the idea of the Northeast, but not like right on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Because it's so crazy there. It's crowded and traffic, just like the problems we were living in Austin. So once I Googled it, I was like, oh, okay, this is great. But yeah, I had never heard of Rochester. So
it's funny when you see some like really bad traffic, and it's kind of laughable. Mm-hmm. I mean, now being here for nearly 20 years is kind of like, all right, 490 East gets backed up because they're doing something,
right?
All the way to
Blue Moon
to Fisher, and you're like,
you get so angry if like there's 1 minute of delay,
right?
Because you're not used to it.
Now instead of 15 minutes, it's going to take me 20 minutes to get
18
there.
18 minutes. Yeah. This is a horrible traffic jam. The other day we had to stop, and I forget where I was. It was somewhere in Pittsford, because I have to go through, Pittsford to get to Fairport from Henrietta. And there was a goose crossing. Can you say that? Geese crossing? There were like 30 geese, and we took a picture of it to send to our friends in Austin. We're like, look, a 5 o'clock traffic jam. And everyone was backed up because there are all these geese crossing the street.
That's awesome.
And it made me laugh, and I was like, this is a Rochester traffic jam. And I can live with that. Yeah. I can live with that. Texas, I'm in there. I'm 2 hours to get to work each way. I mean, oh man, I'd come to work and I was like a homicidal maniac at that point. And you can't help it. Because you're sitting in traffic. You're watching the clock tick. You're like, where is everyone going at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday?
Yeah.
Because that's
somewhere else.
Somewhere else.
I lived in West Broward and drove down to West Miami, which was Doral, where the Doral Open was and stuff.
Oh.
Which is, with no traffic, is like 35, 40 minutes worth of a drive. One person gets pulled over and forget it. That 45 minutes just turned into 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
I used to have, I think I was getting into work at 7:30.
Yeah.
And I would leave at roughly 6:45
right.
was a good time. And sometimes it would be like, I'd just get onto the turnpike and I'd have to text my boss and be like, yeah, I won't be there for
tomorrow.
Yeah.
I won't be there for today.
I have no idea when I'll be there, but it'll be at some point.
I wonder if it's changed with work from home in some of these bigger cities, but I know from all my friends in Austin, it's back to terrible. And everyone moved there during the pandemic. So as if it wasn't crowded enough, everybody moved there. So
everybody's shut in, and then when they go back, when they're allowed back out, there's twice as many people.
Oh, it's like ants fleeing the pile.
Where's all you come from?
I'm good. No, but I'm happy to be here, and it's been a tough 2 years because it's the weirdest time ever on planet Earth.
Yeah,
obviously.
Yeah.
But I don't regret it for a minute moving here at all.
Well, we're happy to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I
haven't gotten rid of me yet.
Yet. I'm wondering if your outlook on life, your general sort of bubbly personality and agreeableness that's a word.
I like that. Putting that on my tombstone one day. She was agreeable.
Agreeable. If that is, directly related to the fact that you moved a lot when you were younger and you were never in one place and you were kind of forced to get out and make friends and meet people at a young age.
That's a good question because I think as we get older too, we start looking more at our parents. When you're younger, you don't pay attention to your parents. And when you do, it's not in a introspective way, probably retro, but introspective way. And there's a lot about my parents I've always wanted to emulate. My dad is very successful, very driven. My mom is also, successful, and she was a stay-at-home mom, but she ran the house. I mean, there was not a speck of dirt in our house growing up. She always had it perfectly designed, and then she started doing design for other people. And somehow she still dropped us off and picked us up every day because my dad traveled for work while running these huge projects for people like Dallas Cowboys players and Dallas Stars players, so well-known people. And just always seemed to have it together. Like she was always showered. She always had food for us. The house still looked perfect somehow when we left. Like the beds were made every morning by her because we couldn't do it. It wasn't perfect enough, And I remember staring, if I could just be half as productive and successful as my parents, then I'll be doing all right. And the older I get, the more I realize like my dad, I think, is forever looking to prove himself or to be more, to do more. And I respect that about him. And I think that's what makes him happy. That's maybe not necessarily what makes me happy anymore, though. I just really kind of I like being busy. I like being stressed in a way, but I also really enjoy just being with my kids and being home. And not that my dad didn't enjoy those things, but I think he really found a lot of his personal value and identity in his job. Whereas my mom found it, she was more like this. It's the kids were her identity. But everywhere we went, my parents, they still, they're like this to this day and it's more so, I think, I don't know if I just see it more or not, but they will literally talk to everybody. I mean, the guy that cuts your meat at the grocery store, the deli guy, my mom would have like a third. And I think the poor guy sometimes would regret asking my parents, like, how's it going? And then it's like,
they're the ones the ones that answer that question.
Yes. But I also saw that my parents always made everybody feel important. It didn't matter if it was the deli guy. And my mom worked with a lot of contractors too, and she always made everybody feel important and treated everybody equally. And my parents were always really big in mission work in the church, so we spent a lot of time in Mexico and Russia, these orphanages and areas, and they always made everybody feel like they were on. It wasn't like, hey, we're here to help you, and it was like, hey, we want to get to know you. Can we help you in any way? We want to serve you, but also like we're all people. Right. So I learned from an early age that all walks of life, all kinds of people, no matter your background or your job or what you look like or where you're from, are the same. And my parents treated everybody the same, but they also ask everybody a million questions. And they are very chatty to the point where sometimes if I go out with them, I just stand there quietly because I'm like, we're going to be here 45 minutes with the checkout guy at Lowe's. So I might as well just hunker down and get ready for it. And I can't help but ask the same things when I'm out. Like I love talking to people and getting to know where they're from. And somehow with all my life experiences, I feel like I can always sort of identify with people in some way or another. And moving forces you to constantly reintroduce yourself and get to know people. So if you've known the same people your entire life, I don't know if you ever get really good at asking questions. Now, that's not the case for everybody. Doug Embledge is from here and works here, and he's fantastic, obviously, at journalism and finding out more and getting to know people. But I do think that moving around and watching my parents having to move around, and they have to find new community people to work around. And somehow wherever we went, my mom and dad always had like a crowd of people around them. So it would take 6 months for my mom to make best friends with the guys at Lowe's and the deli guy and the people at my school. So that definitely taught me how to get outside of myself and get to know other people and to just be friendly to everybody because you never know who you're going to need. And that's not even why you should be friendly, but you never know who's going to help you out or who could be the person that you need to go to rely on. Yeah. And I just never understood not being friendly.
And you just live a happier life
Yeah.
When you approach things that way, when you're friendly and I mean, I know that in my experience, the more questions you ask people about themselves, the more they like you.
Yes.
Because,
but I'm actually also genuinely interested in what most people have to say.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't just ask for the...
No, you don't want to pump up their ego, which is great to do that. People who are on first dates, you always got to ask a lot of questions, right? You don't want to just talk about yourself.
Right.
You want to ask a lot of questions. I've also found that most of my sources of information have not come from school or education necessarily, as much as learning from other people. And you can't learn from other people unless you ask them a crap ton of questions. You know what I mean? Almost cursed there.
That's that was it. You could.
I don't want to. My mom will get mad. I have the mouth of a trucker, and so I have to really be careful about editing myself. My parents aren't very proud of my language, but I'm like, listen, I've been working in newsrooms a long time. I'm married to a cop. Like, it's just part of the gig. Try not to do it though.
It's an interesting life that you lead. The split life of not cursing on the air and in your professional.
I've yet to do it. I mean, like slipping in podcasts or something. Yes, I've done it. Maybe I think I did it maybe on Todd and George's, but I have a pretty good mental delineation between I'm on the air and I'm okay.
Little switch that you flip.
Yeah, but I'm always one of those people, like, when journalists get caught on a hot mic, I'm like, ooh, that minute that commercial starts rolling, I'll like turn to Marty and be like, and it's cursing. And Marty's just kind of like, he's used to it now, but he's pretty good about never cursing just in case he's on a hot mic.
Yep.
I really have a lot of faith in my audio people because I'm like, please do not pop me up right now because it's just, I don't know, it's how I express myself. And I used to feel bad about it, and now I don't. So I'm like, it makes me happy. I just try not to do it so I get fired on the air. Like, no one needs to hear that at 6 o'clock in the morning eating their Cheerios, their kids. So, like, I get it. I'm being respectful. But, like, the minute that light goes off for the on air, I'm like, that's when me comes out.
That's your new downloadable ebook.
Yeah.
Cursing Your Way to a Happy Life with Kris Betts.
It's so true. I was in such a restrictive parochial school environment growing up. Like, we weren't allowed, we had to listen to this whole thing about you can't even say, oh my gosh, because you're
substituting God.
Yes.
I know that.
You know that.
I know that.
Oh,
yes.
I don't know if that's like a Bible Belt thing because I feel like it's
I don't
not
know.
as
I
bad
went to
up here.
Catholic high school and I just remember that was what they said.
Yes. So it was like, you can't even say, oh my gosh. And so for the longest time, I had this horrible guilt whenever I'd say, oh my gosh. I'm like, you know what? I'm too old for this now. Like, there's so many important things in life. And to me, that's not really one of them.
Yeah.
And like, I think God knows I'm cool with that. Like God's up there like, Kris. I'm like, well, I love you, but like, come on. So I've just kind of let go of a lot of the need to be perfect because I am tired. And I also feel like people don't like people who are perfect either, and I'm like, I don't like people who are perfect. They're kind of annoying.
And what is perfect?
Who knows? I don't know.
Like
I bet
what?
Some of my teachers in my high school probably could have told you what was perfect because they were trying to tell us what was perfect.
Oh yeah, but still, yes, I know.
Yeah, yeah. It was like a private Christian school in North Dallas. Don't regret it for a second, but it kind of felt like once I got out of college, I was like, all right. Can I be like myself now?
Yeah, you're like looking around.
I'm not gonna get like lightninged on by God. Or
I know.
That.
The Catholics have that same thing with the guilt.
Oh yeah,
God's always watching you.
Yes,
and you say something, and God's gonna,
Yes, spite. What is it? What am I trying to look for? Smite you down. I was like trying to find that word. Yes, it's early. Sorry, smite you down. I don't want to be smoten.
No smote.
No smote for me today. So far, I'm good. I've pretty much used every curse word out there. So I'm
good.
I think God's cool.
It's important to have a good, vocabulary.
And I also like that
Vast.
It helps people. I think it disarms people a little bit, which is nice because they're like, oh, you're the news lady and you can present yourself with manners. My parents tried. And so I try. But
you should. Or it's fucking raining out there.
I know. Then you throw it out there and you can actually see the shock register every time still in people's eyes. And I kind of get a kick out of it now. Like they're like, oh shit, did she just say that? And then they kind of like laugh it off. And then I feel like they visibly I do it when I'm interviewing people. I mean, I know that cameras, and again, I trust my photographer. It's not live. A lot of times we interview people like this isn't, surprise.
I forgot to tell you.
Breaking news, it's not live. And so I'll just tell my photographer, like, obviously they know they wouldn't throw me under the bus, like, don't air this. But I'll curse because I just feel like it helps people realize, like, I'm just a human. I just happen to be the human asking you questions.
And most people talk that way.
They
most
do.
people.
Yes.
In some way,
Yes.
you know, and it, like you said, it is very disarming. It's very like, hey, I'm one of you. We're just people doing our jobs.
Yes. And if the FCC is not looming over me, like I can be myself.
Like God.
Yes.
God and the FCC.
I honestly feel like I'm more scared of the FCC than I am of God at this point in my life. Sad. Just kidding, God.
Because God forgives, not so much the FCC.
No, but I also feel like that's why people are really drawn to these podcasts now. Like podcasting to me has exploded. Now everybody and their mom, no offense, has a podcast, but I love it. I consume them like crazy because people can just say what they actually want to say on there. You know, I mean, they can be themselves and whatever they want to say, they can say. And if you don't like it, you can just switch the podcast. Like you don't have to listen to it.
That's right.
And that's such a nice
Or
thing.
you can write an email and complain about what you don't like about it.
Or you can send a letter.
Send a letter?
But you'd be surprised. People still send letters. I've gotten some really nice letters though lately, but I have this like built-in anxiety from having received weird, usually from like a prison that's nearby where we're broadcasting.
Oh boy.
And I guess prisons keep news on 24/7 because I find a lot of my fan base comes from prisons. Waco was like that because I think there's a big prison out near Waco. So
boy.
That one. But you know, hate mail too. It's like they sat down and was like wrote it on the piece of paper and then like you took the effort to stamp it and mail it and you still, I was like, okay, it's different than shooting off a text, right?
Right.
You don't have time to think about it. Like you like legit took time to write this angry or creepy, which tends to be more the case, letter. But lately, so I still have like PTSD from opening letters about, you know, this stuff. And then I'll open it. It's like the nicest letter.
Yeah.
And someone took the time to write me a nice letter. Like, thank you so much. I forget to write back because I am terrible at like even responding to texts, let alone letters. But I keep them. Yeah. Because I think it's so nice that people do that.
I have some on my wall in there from when I was on the radio here in Rochester. And
are they nice?
I got like a little thank you. Nice like someone sent me a thank you card when they won something.
Oh, that's so nice.
And it was like,
that's good parenting.
You know,
someone raised that kid right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I was just having the same conversation right before you got here.
Oh, really?
About thank you letters.
Yeah.
Or thank you notes.
It's
a
lost art.
Like we made my son when after his graduation party and he got all his cards and stuff. Right. We're like, here's the cards, here's the stack, here are the envelopes. You know, do it.
Yes, I am.
Send out thank you cards.
My parents always did that. Graduation, your wedding.
Yeah.
You know, in my case, 2 weddings. First one was the warm up. Second one was the real thing. You know, any wedding gifts, baby gifts, both times. And it's a lost art. And I hope we keep it up because, well, I guess it depends on us as parents, right? Making the kids do it. Because nowadays, like you can send an e-card, which still is good. It's better than nothing. You know? But there's just something about the writing of it because it takes time, it takes money for the stamp and send it off. That just means so much more, I think, to people.
Yeah, there's definitely an investment when you physically mail a letter.
35 cents. What is it now?
I don't know.
Inflation sucks. It's an $18 investment for that stamp. It's only a matter of time. Oh God. But yeah, so I feel like, you know, and for me too, like you and I have talked about this with my career, like there have come so many things that people will be like, I don't know how you deal with that. And I don't know how you know, the criticism and the negativity and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, man, yes. And sometimes it's hard to not just focus and fixate on those things. But like for every one crappy thing someone says or writes you in a letter, you get 30 to 40 to 400 nice things.
That's good.
And it's so nice. Like the good things about this business have definitely outweighed the negatives. But man, there's some weirdos.
When did you when did you first decide that you or get that first inkling that you wanted to be a journalist?
It's funny because I went to school thinking I wanted to do pre-med because I think I needed to show that I thought, okay, I'm going to make money and I'm going to do pre-med because that at the time was my priority, wanting to be like my dad, to be successful and have a successful career. And I thought people will take me seriously if I'm a doctor. Mm-hmm. But pretty much right away, I was like, I don't really want to do pre-med. I feel like I just should be doing pre-med because I did well in school. You know, I was academically always pretty talented. So it just felt like the thing to do. And I didn't watch news growing up really, so it wasn't like part of my life. But I had a journalism teacher who forced me to be the editor-in-chief of the newspaper because there was physically no one else to do it. So I tell people, oh yeah, I was the editor-in-chief. Like, wow, I'm like, it was me. That was me. And I was also the janitor for the newspaper. Like it was me running it. And I did have lower classmen that kind of helped. But I almost was like, hey, this is a very powerful medium. Like if I write about someone, I mean, in high school before social media too, like you had the power. If you could put someone in the paper, like that was, so it's not like people sucked up to you necessarily, but like you felt like you had this power that nobody else necessarily had. Yearbook had a similar power, right? It's like, I can put your picture in the yearbook, or I can maybe not put that picture in the yearbook. Depends on how I feel about you that day.
Yeah. Or I can put this picture or this picture.
Ooh, yeah. Which one do you want? The one with the booger on it or not with the booger on it? So I felt like, that sense of control, which for a control freak like me was great, and creativity was the huge part for me. So I got to reformat and we won awards for it and everything. It was just, I loved it though. I could spend hours and hours and hours in the photography studio or the lounge, whatever we called it, on Photoshop, like working and creating the newspaper. I liked the content of it too. And I loved writing and I liked going out and like talking to people, shocking, right? And getting the story together. But I loved the creativity of getting to put it together. And then I did the announcements because I was the student government president. So part of that came with doing the announcements. And so it just felt like all these things were coming together. And I remember my dad wanting me to do like ESPN. He's like, I think you can be Erin Andrews. And so I went into it thinking I'll do sports. That's where I started my career in sports. I just didn't love it, and I thought I really like hard news. I like shootings. I like explosions. I'm an adrenaline addict at this point. So I'm like, I like being out on the exciting stuff and feeling like getting the scoop and, being first and being right. And that's important too. And I never really went into it wanting to be on TV, funny enough. And we were, and it was 2004 when I was applying for schools, 2005 when I got into college. And so, with the Iraq and Afghanistan war was still in the height of things. And I thought I wanted to be some embedded reporter. And then I thought, no, it's too dangerous. So I'll do sports. And then I thought, I don't really like sports. So I kind of landed on news, but it just felt like all the things I loved versus all the things I just wanted in life, where I thought money. And I'm like, no, it's not going to make me happy. I want to do something I love. Because you make no money in TV when you start.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So I made $7.25 an hour, my first job in TV. I mean, I made more money working like at Nautica folding jeans in high school than I did coming out of college with a degree and student loans doing news. And like you're putting things on the air, making minimum wage. So, but I didn't care. I loved it so much. I remember in college, we had a little TV station and I got to run the prompter. And just the act of running the prompter that day, because I got to do the on-air stuff later on, but I would call my mom and I go home, I was like jittery with excitement because it felt so exciting to be part of this thing that we created and then put on the little air that they did for UT, because I went to UT and University of Texas. And, it just, I thought if I can run the prompter and be happy, then this is it.
Yeah.
I will never find something else that makes me this happy. And for a long time I didn't until, I think the last few years for a lot of people, their career and their goals
challenge.
and it was a big challenge. So yes, definitely things changed. But man, for the longest time, I used to tell people, if I won the lottery, I'd still be here tomorrow. And I genuinely felt that way.
Day after tomorrow, maybe not, but definitely tomorrow.
Definitely tomorrow. So I can tell everybody on the air and then peace and then never come back. Go out in just a blaze of glory.
Right.
No, but I just like, where else can I meet all these exciting people? Like I've met celebrities and politicians and everybody I got to meet, and that kind of access doesn't come unless you yourself are a politician or a celebrity, and I was never going to be those things. So I was like, I get to like meet people, ask them a ton of questions and like get their picture, and I'm not a fan, I'm not a stalker. This is my job. I get paid for it. It was great.
Who's the coolest person you've ever met? Famous person, not me.
That's tough.
I'm the coolest person you've ever met.
Well, obviously you're number one. I've interviewed so many celebrities, and I'm talking like all the A-list celebrities, like Steve Carell was really nice.
Yeah.
Johnny Depp. I mean, big names. I'm trying to think. Robert Rodriguez is cool. obviously.
He's awesome.
You know, it's like, was that guy that was in, he has like the tattoo teardrops on his face and he's in like all of Rodriguez's movies.
Oh, Danny Trejo.
Danny Trejo is actually just the nicest down to earth person. I think he lives in Austin, so he's always at all these red carpet events, and he remembered me each time I did the interviews, which is great. Yeah. Richard Linklater, another director who lived in Austin, was great. Slacker. Super nice though, like, and would remember us because we did so many different things with them. So hey Kris, you know, and would just know you and was really nice. I mean, I would interview Matthew McConaughey all the time because he was there too. So basically people lived in Austin, but were famous.
But that's the thing. It's like that's where all of these people live.
Right.
So it was almost like doing news in LA because you
kind
had
of, we did red
so many A-listers. I mean, there's not a whole lot of A-listers that live in Rochester. You don't see too many of them.
You're here. But no, it was weird because they live there. So you don't want to be, weird. Like, you're just one of us. You live in Austin, but also it's like, you're a huge freaking celebrity.
Yeah.
But I interviewed Matthew McConaughey enough that it felt like he was just another person that I would interview. And he actually is really nice in person. But Mac Brown is always one that I would remember that. I mean, he's big in UT football, obviously, but now, he's just big because he's for football. And I would get more nervous with Mac Brown because they had a charity together. I don't know if you know that. Jack Ingram, Matthew McConaughey, and Mac Brown of Mac, Jack, and McConaughey. They have a big charity that they did, and that's why I was working with them. And I don't know, Mac Brown was just like, he's cool. You see him on ESPN all the time. And like, that to me was more exciting than Matthew McConaughey,
Interesting.
But we get a lot. Jack Black was kind of an asshole.
Really?
Kind of an asshole.
Really?
Yeah, it was kind of.
He seems like he could be very temperamental. Like if you catch him at the right time, he'll be awesome. And if you don't, it's like,
Because my husband working on 6th Street too as a cop in the early, so many celebrities that he had to deal with, and he has and he's like, oh, that's weird. I always heard Jack Black was really nice because he had been back and forth. And I said, yeah, I think I caught him on a bad day. It was really hot. We were squished. I mean, there's nothing glamorous about covering red carpets at all. Yeah. You're meeting glamorous people. You may get a selfie with them. That's exciting. But like I remember Carol Burnett and I were joking because I got a picture with her and it was like, Carol Burnett, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And it was so hot and so cramped. And we're both just like, we are so over this, And that's how Jack Black was. And he was like in direct sunlight in the Texas heat, I think in July, whose brilliant idea was that?
Yeah, right.
And sweaty and just hot.
Yeah, he
he's
probably
a larger
felt
guy anyway, so I think he was just like extra sweaty and hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get it. I felt miserably hot and sweaty, so he just did not want to be there. And so, you're forced to kind of do these step and repeats and ask. We each get 3 questions, and he just did not want to be there. So I hate that my one real experience with him was that, but I also kind of get it. So I'd probably be the same way.
I'm starting to get annoyed just thinking about it.
I know. It's so hot. I mean, Texas heat, Florida heat's
man.
actually worse, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I spent, I think I spent 2 weeks in Galveston doing some stuff for the cruise line before. Spent a couple of days in Dallas.
Yeah.
So I've been around Texas, but not for, extended period of time.
Don't you feel like there's this like kind of like separation? Like there's Florida people and then there's Texas people and you're kind of one or the other?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I feel like you can't be a Texas person and also be a Florida person.
The Galveston people are kind of like that because it's an island and it's kind of like by the water.
Yeah.
I think the closer you get to the water, there's some similarities there.
Yeah.
But like middle of Texas,
totally different.
Yeah.
I have no idea what the middle of Florida looks like. I assume all of Florida
it looks a lot like the middle of Texas.
It's unfortunate. Do you guys have lakes and stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I say Texas has a bunch. I'm going to come off as people are going to be like, she is so dumb. But I don't know. I've never driven through the middle of Florida. Hadn't had no reason to do it. So
Lake Okeechobee is quite big. It's obviously not as big as the Great Lakes that we have here, but I was really surprised. That was the first lake that I've ever been to where you can't see the other side.
That's the weird thing about Lake Ontario.
It's like it looks like an ocean.
My friend, we don't have any lakes like that in Texas.
Yeah.
And you're always very aware that you're on a lake if there's even really water in the lake because droughts are a real problem there too.
Right.
And the first time I saw Lake Ontario, I was like, this is a lake?
Yeah.
I had never been to a Great Lake before. This is my first one.
Yeah.
She'll always be the most special to me. So, but people are like, yeah, you can see Toronto on the other side on a clear day, which I still think is bullshit because I've never seen Toronto.
See Toronto.
That's right.
Or,
like, that's
or
not
it's
right.
never clear.
Okay. Yeah. I'm like,
because I think it's 3 miles across or something like that. I don't even know.
That's really far.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't see 3 miles, period. I don't know who these people are that are saying this. I'm pretty sure it was on the Webster Facebook page. Do you know what I'm talking about on Facebook?
No.
It's like you have to be a Webster person to get in on it. Oh, there's all kinds of good stuff on those Facebook pages. I'm learning a lot about Webster and Fairport just through the neighborhood pages.
Where life is worth living.
Oh my God.
What's Fairport? Do we have?
Yeah, we have one. You're not on it?
No. Is it a?
It's like a neighborhood page.
I might be.
Honestly, people just complain most of the time on this anyways. They're like, who left their trash out of this? Or I don't like the way this is looking, or blah, blah, blah.
There's always someone complaining about a dog barking.
It's Nextdoor. It's like Nextdoor for
gosh.
Facebook. Are you even on Nextdoor?
Not anymore.
Oh. But you know what I've learned too watching the fair? I think Fairport's up and coming. You know?
Still?
Yeah, I know. What is their logo? On the rise? Or that's their little slogan?
Been on the rise since 1965.
Okay, but here's the thing. So I came from cities that were always on the rise because Dallas growing, Austin growing. You get used to cities growing. And I think, it took me a minute to learn here, like it's not going to explode around me anymore. So it's pretty stable. But I have this like gut feeling after having experienced it that Fairport's it's gonna be like a bigger deal. I think down the line we've got the cannery that opened. I don't know if you've been down there.
I haven't.
Off 31. Oh man, like the village itself is growing. I've been kind of like gotten an in with some of the people on the development board just to ask like, hey, what's going over there? And some new restaurants coming in that are in these old dilapidated buildings near the canal.
Yeah.
So feel like it's on that.
No,
cusp
you're right. You're
of
right.
Becoming a bigger thing.
You're definitely right. My in-laws first moved there. When was it? 2003 or something like that. They first moved to
Fairport?
the block that we live on now.
Oh.
We lived in Fairport. We lived right off of Arol, right off of the Stinky Farm.
Yeah.
I was chased by a cow one time, but that's a different.
That sounds like some Texas
different
shit
episode.
right there.
It's totally some Texas stuff.
Right back home.
But it's definitely grown since then. You could tell.
Oh yeah. Yes.
With all the new stuff that they put. I do. Anytime I hear about these old dilapidated buildings becoming something cool.
Yeah.
And there's so many of them, not only in Fairport, all over Rochester. It's like these old
Beautiful
tool
buildings.
works, and you're like,
yeah.
Well,
the one off what is it downtown where like the West Elm is and where our house is, and there's a restaurant there. Trattoria or something.
I don't know.
Like that. That's an old armory. The Armory.
Oh, the Armory.
Yeah, that's an old armory.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then the one in Village is Fairport is an old cannery. So it's literally called the cans where it was a can factory. So it's huge and I guess was abandoned forever and just within the last few years. But it feels a lot to me, and I hate to keep making this comparison, but it does feel like what I saw happen in downtown Austin. I know the growth's not going to be on the same level here by any means, but I do New York taxes, but I do think that I can see it kind of becoming like the place to be.
Yeah.
Whereas, Pittsford and Brighton and Webster's growing too, because it's got room to grow, but these other like towns are kind of built out. So you get what you get, there's some new things, but Fairport has a lot of room to grow.
Yeah.
So it's cool to be a part of it and to feel like I'm back in an area that's growing. I just hope nowhere near the scale. Like I do not need more traffic than the train already provides.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there is that. I was one of the reasons why I left Florida was because of that traffic
we
talked about.
Traffic,
Not the train.
Yeah.
No, the train. We were far away from the train.
I was like, that same train followed you
but
down
you hear
there?
does the train, does the train bother you?
No, I don't even hear. I drug myself to sleep every night. So are you kidding? I have to go to bed at like 6:30 or 7 at night.
Oh,
it takes
right.
drugs to go to bed at 6:30 or 7. I'm not talking hard drugs. I'm just saying like melatonin.
Oh yeah.
Tylenol PM.
I know melatonin well.
Oh my gosh, yeah. My neighbor, I think, starts mowing the yard at like I've determined his schedule. It's about 7 o'clock every Monday. I guess it's when he gets home. Good for him. Oh my God. I'm like, the minute in my head it's just like the weed whacker blood.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, like there are not enough drugs to get through that. But the train's far enough away, it doesn't bother me at all.
That was the only thing about when we were looking for a place to live.
Yeah.
We found a house that we really liked, but it was like you could literally see the train from the back deck.
Okay, that might be a problem.
And I was like,
yeah, ours is just far enough away. That
they're like, oh, but you get used to it. Eventually you won't hear it. And I'm like, I can hear the train from where I live off of Guernsey.
And does it bother you?
No.
No, it's like fun.
I mean, I can't hear it like with the doors closed, but if I'm outside, I can hear
you can hear it. Honestly, with my kids, they're young. It's just all I hear is kids screaming. Like it's hard to hear anything else other than kids screaming. It's just constant.
A train is a nice
screaming.
Change of pace.
Like I'll take the train because they're 2 and 4. All they do right now is scream. Either they want something, they're fighting, or someone fell, or one of them hit the other one. So. Work is a nice break from all of that.
And you know what? We haven't even talked about your work.
Oh, I work too.
It's been 49 minutes and we've just been shooting the stuff.
I know.
As they say. Okay, so
you've been warned.
So what's ahead for you?
Well,
I skipped a whole bunch.
The train of change is the
train of change.
Yeah, so I'm assuming by the time this airs, I will have made the announcement, but and it took 2 years. I feel like I could do an entire podcast just on soul searching and finding your identity, because I kind of felt like, after my first daughter was born, I had this insane need to prove that I could be successful on TV with a kid, because a lot of my friends had kids. Like the schedule is really hard. It's demanding. They got out. It's tough. You work this last year. I worked Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, Thanksgiving Day. I mean, it's tough. We had to pretend Christmas was on Saturday because I wasn't working Saturday. And I knew the older they got, the harder that would be. So, after my first, I had this need to prove myself and work twice as hard and twice as long. And look, kid's not going to stop me from achieving my goals. And my goals were to be like Diane Sawyer, or Christiane Amanpour, like one of these real journalists, so quote unquote, not a personality, but a journalist. But after my second daughter, I don't know if it's just because I'm so damn tired, which is probably a big part of it, but also my priorities changed, and I had really bad postpartum, or they call it perinatal depression. So it's when you're like postpartum, but before you have the baby, so while you're pregnant. And I had this kind of existential crisis. Like I was so tired. I was still working. I was in a flood, covering flood coverage, like up to my waist, 8 months pregnant, 7 or 8 months pregnant with my second, in the dark, worrying about trying not to get electrocuted because there's live wires everywhere. I mean, we were in a restaurant going live in the dark in a flood, and I'm so pregnant. And this is TMI, but I had to go to you have to pee every 5 minutes.
Right.
And I could just go, because where am I going to go? It's flooded. And I'm like, this is ridiculous, Don't get me wrong. Part of me loved it. And I beat out the competition for the live shot. And that part was still an adrenaline rush. And I loved providing information to my community. But at some point I thought, am I doing this for me, or am I doing this for what I think I need to do for other people?
Right.
And after I had my second, and I took this job, I thought it would be different, but it's still TV. It's still very demanding. And then COVID happened, and it felt like it was just COVID all the time. I mean, you live it. Mm-hmm. It's different when you're at work and you're covering flood, but then you go home and your house is warm and dry and you're not thinking flood. Yeah. What if you're covering a flood all day and you go home and your house is flooded? Then you got to go back into work the next day and still cover the flood. It becomes very draining. And that's what it started happening with COVID. It was like, okay, we're in COVID. It's affecting our everyday lives every minute. And I have to go to work and just talk about it for 8 hours straight. And it is exhausting. Oh, man. And so the things that I loved, getting out, being creative, meeting new people, all of it got taken away. Mm. And instead, I felt like all I was doing was waking up at 2:30 in the morning, 5 days a week, feeling awful physically because of the lack of sleep, and just being the bearer of awful news. I felt like if you turned on the news, you would just think the world was ending every day. Whereas, kind of life went on. Like it wasn't great, but it went on. So it definitely made me start thinking, who am I? What do I want? I knew I wanted something different, but I could not come to terms with who I was and if I would be important anymore, or if I would have any self-worth anymore. And it was hard. I mean, a lot of therapy, going to a doctor. I mean, I don't sugarcoat it. I'm like, it was hard. I had to go on antidepressants. I think a lot of us did this last year, and I'm not going to sugarcoat things, say everything was great. It was really freaking hard. I'm new. I don't know anybody here. I think everyone was tense and maybe not at their best. in general, particularly in news. And so it just was a lot of circumstances that made me think, okay, I actually can't physically and mentally go on like this. So I have to change something. But I was still resistant to it. And it wasn't until I started looking at other people, and we talk about this mass exodus of people from their jobs, because I think a lot of people were in the position of I am, like, what do I really want? Once you're forced to just be stuck in it because there's nothing else going on, you're not taking vacations, you're not planning date nights, you're just doing your job and then you're home.
Yeah.
And I started getting jealous of all these other people and realizing if I'm jealous of other people getting out, it's probably time for me to get out. I just never thought I would be brave enough. So it took 2 years, and I don't know what the turning point was, but I just knew that I couldn't keep doing this anymore. And it wasn't doing me or anybody else any favors if I wasn't all in, because you really have to be all in when you're serving the community, which is what we do. So I am doing something else. As of this podcast, I will have announced that I want to pursue my love of interior design. It's what I've grew up with my mom doing, and I loved doing it. I kind of wish I had gone to college for it. I don't know why. I think because I thought in my head I needed to prove myself to either be a really successful doctor or be Diane Sawyer or something. But now that I'm like, okay, what do I love? You have to take a long, hard look. Like, what makes me happy? What makes me tick? And what do I do my best in? It's creative things, very creative. And I like working with people. And I like being, in an intimate area. And so with news, it was you're asking them tough questions about some things in their lives or an experience they've gone through. With design, it's like, this is your home. This is where you live with your family. Like, what do you want your home to feel and look like? So I've been doing it on the side, and I think I'm like, you know what? I owe it to myself, even if I make no money, which is terrifying and one of the biggest things that's held me back. But I'm like, I have to try it. I owe it to myself. And I read other people who have like completely 180'd their career. And I'm always like, how the hell they do that? And that's why I ask so many questions. Like, how did you change your career? How did you do this? Because I never thought I'd be doing it. And I think it's really freaking brave when people do it. And I'm finally being brave, and I'm finally doing what I feel called to do, which is to do something else.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thanks. I'm terrified.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
I pee myself a little every time I think about it.
But those seats are expensive.
I know. I'm sorry. I'll wait the next 10 minutes. I also probably peed earlier because that's what you do after kids. You just pee yourself all the time. Definitely lost any followers I already had at that point. But no, I just, I'm very scared, but I'm very ready.
I know what you mean. The pandemic really pushed me out of radio. It was July of 2020, and it was like, all right, so I've already been moved to hourly, and now I'm only getting paid for 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
And what am I doing?
Yeah.
Should I spend the first 4 hours of my day doing horribly underpaid radio, or should I invest that time into my own business? And that's what I did.
Yeah, which is so scary, starting your own business.
It's terribly scary.
I'm terrified.
And it's been over a year, and it's still scary because you don't know from 1 week to the next, especially if it's just yourself and you're starting small, which is where you should start small. Some people, they're like, I'm starting my own business, and they somehow have, $100,000 to play with. And it's like, hey,
right.
But
where?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah. So
honestly, I joke, but I'm like, my third marriage, I'm marrying for money. My husband never listens to anything I do, so I know he won't be listening to this.
I was going to say,
my God, the first time I definitely didn't marry for money. The second time I thought I'm going to do it because, I was tired of being a poor journalist, but then I fell in love with the police officer, didn't do it for money, obviously. And then now the third time I joke, I'm like, oh my God, I'm definitely marrying for money next, because I'm tired of, where do these people get this money to like just start things or take a year-long break from their real job? Someone once told me the most addictive drug in America, obviously besides the drug, is the 2-week paycheck, is the guarantee of corporate's 2-week paycheck.
Oh, yeah.
And it is terrifying to get out from underneath that guarantee. And I still I'm not sure if I'll fall back into the security. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but entrepreneurs who can take that leap knowing you may completely fail and have nothing left. You don't have that corporate pad to jump off, or the parachute. It's scary.
Yeah.
And so getting away from that is scary. I haven't done it yet, but I will.
Having that special someone in your life that is, that supports you, and that is there to back you up, that makes all the difference.
Yeah, that's fine. I also just would love to have someone who can be like, here's some money. No, I'm just kidding.
That's all well and good, but where's my sugar daddy?
No. He's great. I mean, and he has a pension. We're very blessed that way. We do, we have overhead, but we have a pension, and our Austin, we have our home there making income, which is great. So, we positioned ourselves. We recently sold our house to move to the village to cut down our overhead, knowing this was, and that's what I think a lot of people that hear you took that leap and you start your own business, you change your career, plan for that shit because you're gonna need to make, and we've been planning for a year,
so that's good.
Getting rid of overhead, selling our house, cutting down, making sure financially I could make this move because I've got mouths to feed. I can't just go back to mom and dad at the end of the day and be like, can I live with you while I'm doing this? Not that there's anything wrong with that. I just don't have that ability. So that's one thing I wish more people would talk about is when you take a risk to start a new business or something, you have to plan. Yeah. You have to be brave and take a risk, but also plan.
Yeah. And there wasn't a whole lot of planning for me. I mean, I already had the business going. Yeah. So I had that part done. Yeah. Which was a big help. But what you've done is fantastic. So that there should be, I mean, I'm not going to tell you how you're supposed to feel, but that more than fear, the fear that you have is correct to have, but I think it would be worse if you didn't have those things planned.
If I had just done what I felt like doing at points, just been I quit.
Right.
I quit.
I can't
do it anymore.
You can't do that.
I couldn't do that. Yeah. No, and I wasn't going to do that to my poor husband who likes financial stability and give him a stroke. He's older than me. I can't give him a stroke. And so and for my kids' sake and for my sanity's sake, I know myself, I like stability too. So yeah, I'm not in a sink or swim position quite, but I do feel like I know myself and I need to be successful at what I do because that's how I'm driven. And if I'm not successful, then I feel like I'm not doing it right. Mm-hmm. And so it has always pushed me, especially in TV. To me, what was success? Success was changing people through the stories I did and winning awards and getting that next job, that big job. Salary was good. TV salaries are not great, but the salaries were important, but those were the things. So I won the awards I wanted to win, and I won the Emmy, and I won, and I changed people's lives, and I felt like I did that part. That's when I felt like, okay, I think I can, I've closed this chapter. I've done what I can and I want to do, and now I can do something different. I just need to figure out what that is.
I think you figured it out.
Would you like me to redecorate your house?
My house needs to be firebombed and rebuilt from the ground up.
I can do that.
You can do that?
Right. Yeah, don't tell your insurance, but I could probably get that
done. My wife and I always talk about how it totally needs a complete redesign.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard.
However they built our house in whatever it was, 1970 or 73 or something, whenever anyone comes to my house to fix something, they always go, I wonder why they did it that way. Doesn't matter what it is.
Is it hodgepodge together?
That's how my house is. Yeah. My house is it's like this house, when they were building it, they ran out of the things that they normally do. Oh, no. So they kind of used this.
Other things.
Yes, other things.
Yeah.
It's like the drywall is held up by
thumbtacks,
gum and thumbtacks.
Oh, no.
It's not that bad.
There is probably a nail shortage now at some point. That's the other thing, too. I'm jumping into everyone's you're jumping into design at the worst time. This backlogs of shipping, and it takes 40 weeks to get a couch and a supply chain. I'm like, well, you know what? If I can make it in this, then I can do it in anything. It's like starting in real estate in 2009. If you could do real estate in 2009, you can do real estate anytime. Yeah. Exactly. Kind of how news is now. Yeah. I feel bad for people starting in news. I'm like, if you can do this, you can do anything. And I respect that about young journalists.
So speaking of young journalists, what advice would you have for them?
Is it bad? My instinct was to be don't. No, it's it's bad. That's how I know I need to get out. Because if I'm not feeding other people's, filling their cups with information that's good with all my experience, because I used to teach doing once or twice a semester at the University of Texas journalism. And I loved it. And I hoped to just give them a little bit of the passion that I had. Yeah. Now I would be like, run, go to the business school right now. No, that's why I knew. I was like, okay, this is not doing me any good or anybody else any good. But I would say for young journalists, funny enough, most people would say work hard, blah, 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 network. Yes, those are all good things. You're going to hear that a million times. Don't lose yourself in this job. is the thing that I would tell young journalists, because it does, for most people I know, tend to define who you are. And it's interesting because a lot of people I know who went into like corporate jobs or bank jobs or whatever afterwards, they weren't defined by what they did. They still had a life outside of work. But when you work crazy hours and you sleep weird hours and you work holidays and you work weekends because news never stops, it becomes who you are, and a lot of your priorities, your family, your friends go by the wayside because you have to you feel like you have to give one to the other. I hope newsrooms and news managers, and I think it's a reckoning at this point with so many people leaving. I'm definitely not the first, and I'm not going to be the last, that they need to give their employees more balance. We cannot be answering emails all waking times of the day. I have been woken up by phone calls for breaking news more times than I can count. And I have also had to work 48, 72 hours in a row. I mean, and cops do this, nurses do this, so it's not like we're the only ones, but a lot of times the compensation isn't there.
Yeah.
It should be, or there's no pension. There's a lot of the benefits for some of these other jobs aren't there. So it's okay to say no. Like if you don't feel safe being 8 months pregnant and standing in electrified floodwater, that's okay. You don't have to. You can say no. I didn't know how to say no. And now looking back, there are times where I'm like, I probably should have said no. And I don't think I would have lost my job. I think they would have understood, but I always felt like I couldn't say no.
Yeah.
That there was someone right behind me waiting for that one spot. And if I said no, then that's it. I'm done. And someone else is right there chomping at the bit, willing to take that spot because it's a cutthroat business. So make sure you're in self-care is such a word we toss around more, but find something outside of news that makes you happy. If it's playing an instrument, if it's dance lessons, if it's whatever it is, just do it, and make sure it's not all about the job because you'll get burned out and then you'll be done at 25 and you won't get to achieve the things that you want to. And I'm glad I got to achieve those things I did because I have no regrets walking away.
That's important.
Yeah.
No regrets.
No regrets. Just onward and upward. I can close this chapter and I feel good about it.
And we can close this podcast episode on your chapter. Let's put down 1 year.
Okay.
And we're gonna check back in with you in a year and find out what's going on.
Hopefully still not peeing my pants with fear. So that would be an upgrade from this point in a year.
And maybe you have to seek some other kind of help. I don't know.
No. Exactly. Doctors listening, you know where to find me.
But Kris, thank you so much for coming in and sharing. I am sad to see that you're leaving, but I'm very happy that you're going to stay in our community and still
I'm here.
Be doing what you're doing, and I might be able to walk by and see you.
I'm in the village.
Walking down the canal path.
Hell yeah, I'm always around. I'm always there. Hey, howdy. That's how we say hi in Texas.
Hey, howdy.
Hey, howdy.
All right.
Feel free to say howdy.
What do you say? Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
No, we don't say it any way different.
Later.
Yeah.
See y'all.
Anyway, you guys.
Y'all come back now. You're here.
You got it. Y'all. We're gonna go over yonder. Y'all come back now. No, we don't say that. I'm just kidding. We don't say that. Goodbye.
Bye.